Mike, let me ask you. All right, now, so what I'm going to throw this out and ask you. I want your opinion on it.
Yeah.
Why do you think people in the government, especially among the Democrats, are having, especially among this administration, why are they having such a hard time admitting that Islam is connected directly to terrorism, that Islam is the enemy? What's the deal?
Well, speaking of being able to articulate matters which other people are thinking but are unable to speak this openly, it is with respect to this topic in particular, because this is a strange legal matter coming from American shores. In fact, you have got to be very careful what you say in the next 10 minutes, because I'm about to say things that I am allowed to say, but you're not.
Okay.
For example, I'm allowed to say that Islam is the primary offender when it comes to terrorism in the world. But believe it or not, you are prohibited by law from saying it. Are you aware of this, sir?
Actually, I'm not aware that I'm prohibited by law, so tell me.
All right, and this goes back to George W. Bush, by the way. This is one of the things we can actually nail on George Bush and blame it on him in perpetuity, because this all goes back to the USA Patriot Act. And as most of the listeners will know, the Patriot Act was an anti-terrorism bill passed in the United States after the September 11th, 2001 attacks, and it was actually ratified and passed into law, by the way. And I'm not sure how many of the listeners have actually read the Patriot Act, but if you go to Title I of the Patriot Act, here's what it says. It says Title I contains 6 sections, which in turn establish a fund for counter-terrorist actions and condemns discrimination against Arab and Muslim Americans.
Wow.
Now, that is enshrined into U.S. law. It doesn't mention any other religious group except Arab and Muslim Americans.
Wow.
That the United States Patriot Act, a United States law, when speaking of terrorism in the United States, prohibits even mentioning Muslim Americans. Now, what does the word discrimination mean?
Right.
It means, this is the definition of discrimination: treatment or consideration of, or making a distinction in favor of or against a person or thing on the group, class, or category to which that person or thing belongs. So you cannot say, okay, somebody committed terrorism because it is enshrined in the Muslim religion, for example.
Right.
That is against the law. That is against the United States Patriot Act, if you can believe that. So that is why no politician is permitted by law to say this is an Islamic problem. This is a Muslim problem.
Right.
And they're not allowed to go through the various verses from the Quran, which explicitly and implicitly, command that the Muslim do these various acts. You know, I often say that Muslims who don't do these sorts of things, we ought to be glad that they don't take their religion seriously.
Right.
But there's another reason why. So here we have. There's a lot of talk about Obama coming out and saying that the acts of ISIS are not Islamic, and ISIS is not Islamic, even though the word Islamic is actually in their name.
Right. Yeah, go ahead. I want to go off on that, but I'll let you do it first. Go ahead.
Right. Well, he's prohibited by law. He's prohibited by law from saying such things.
Right.
And in fact, you are too. You are prohibited by the United States Patriot Act from saying that terror is a decidedly Islamic problem. But guess what? Now we have all of the various Islamic groups, Islamic talking heads coming on places like Fox News and CNN saying, hey, look, we're against the beheadings and we're against the violence against yada, yada, yada. Well, listen, does even have a law enshrined within Islam which commands them to reject the activities of their own religion. And you know what that's called. That's called Taqiyya.
Right, exactly.
Taqiyya is a form of religious dissimulation or a legal dispensation whereby a believing individual can deny his faith or commit otherwise illegal or blasphemous acts while they are in fear or at risk of significant persecution.
In other words, they have the religious right and even duty to lie and to deceive to protect Islam, and it's okay. That's what Taqiyya is.
That is exactly what it is. So that is why you cannot trust a Muslim when the Muslim says that beheading and killing and slaughtering innocent people is Islamic. You can't trust them when they say it's not Islamic. You can't trust them when they say that, because there are many verses in the Quran and the Hadith which actually proclaim the acts as being holy, subjugating, killing, and murdering, and many other acts which we won't get into on the radio here. That these acts are decidedly Islamic in nature, which I'm allowed to say because I'm on Canadian soil, by the way. Whenever a Muslim goes on Fox News or CNN and says, no, that's not Islamic, you can't trust anything of what he says, because he is bound by Sharia law to defend whenever he's on foreign soil, foreign territory, where he's greatly outnumbered. He is permitted and commanded by a law contained within Sharia law, which is the act of Taqiyya, to defend the religion by saying, no, that's not Islamic, when in fact it very much is Islamic.
Right. Now, let me break in here, Mike. Let me say two things. First of all, I want to comment on what you're saying. Second of all, I want to say we're going to take a break in a moment. When we do, hang up and call back. Your connection is horrible. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. But first of all, I want to say, so a Muslim, then, an Islamic adherent, is allowed by their religion, in fact, encouraged by their religion, in fact, directed by their religion to use taqiyya, the act of lying and deception, in order to protect themselves and to protect Islam and to protect the true agenda of Islam. Now, here's what I want you to think about, Mike, and in this audience, I want you to think about this. The director of the United States CIA is John Brennan. Did you know that John Brennan is a convert to Islam?
Right.
He is a Muslim. Now, he wasn't, but he denounced his prior faith when he was an ambassador, I think, in the Middle East, and he, or an agent or something, I don't remember, he might not have been an ambassador, I don't remember, but when he was in the Middle East, he converted, full conversion to Islam. So we have a Muslim CIA director, and he can commit taqiyya. I mean,
right.
I mean, think about it, Mike. Think of the ramifications of that.
Well, in case people missed it, taqiyya is a religious ordinance within Islam which commands them to do such things. So you can't trust anything the Muslims say unless they say, hey, look, here it is in our holy book. We're commanded to do this, so run for your lives. Here we come.
Right.
When they say that,
right,
believe it because it's coming from their holy book. But when they say things like that's not Islamic, when in fact it is, you can't trust them. You can't trust them because they're doing something very Islamic, that is lying for Allah.
Right. And Obama has said, this is not Islamic. John Kerry has said this is not. Listen, did you hear the interview? I think it was done yesterday or the day before with John Kerry. I can't remember who was doing it, but I've heard it several times on the radio and on the internet. And I'm going to have to paraphrase this, folks, but John Kerry was asked, look, are we at war with Islam or not? What's going on? And he beat around the bush and, and he laughed and he giggled and uh'd and, well, I don't know, you can call it war. If it makes you feel better to call it war, you can call it war. And then finally he said, but our struggle is against ISIS, the enemy of Islam. What?
Right.
What planet are these people from, Mike? John Kerry, Secretary of State, says that ISIS is the enemy of Islam, not the enemy of the United States, not the enemy of Christians, not the enemy of Jews, not the enemy of Israel, the enemy of Islam? And
right,
ISIS,
and sadly, John Kerry is bound by one of Bush's children, the United States Patriot Act. John Kerry is bound by law to say these things. It really is a sad enigma, isn't it?
Yeah. But Mike, I got to say this: I did some research during the commercial break there. I went to WorldNet Daily, a February 2013 article written by Drew Zahn that talked about John Brennan, the CIA, director that Obama picked, surprise, surprise, converted to Islam years ago in Saudi Arabia. That was reported in February 2013. And
right.
John Brennan was serving as CIA station chief in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in the 1990s, and he converted to Islam. And so when Obama comes in office, he picks a converted Muslim to be the head
right.
of the CIA. Surprise, Surprise.
Well, listen,
surprise.
there is no such commandment in the... so now you can't trust anything John Brennan says because
that's right.
He's embraced a religion which commands the followers to lie. But listen, there is no such commandment in Christianity. In fact, Jesus himself says, if you deny me before men, I will deny you before the Father.
Right.
So the exact opposite can be said about Christianity. That its most ardent followers can be trusted completely because we are commanded to follow Jesus and die doing it and never deny him. In fact, in Islam, they're commanded to deny Islam completely in order to preserve their lives so that Islam can continue to spread.
Yeah.
So there we have a dire contradictions between the two religions, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and whenever you see the exact opposite of the Word of God, guess who's behind that?
Right, and there we have something satanic involved.
Absolutely, always. Hey, listen.